a game is a system, and a system produces a certain range of results. A system shapes the behavior of its users. It's hilarious. Like, right, there's this like system matters versus system doesn't matter, like weird culture war. Like,
Yeah.
right, and like if you tell the system doesn't matter, people, you're like, cool, let's play Burning Wheel then, and they're like, no, like, well, but I thought system didn't matter. But knowing that a game is a system, and then knowing that the system is going to shape the behavior of the player, that is super powerful. Now I'm thinking like a designer. Now I'm thinking like someone who's trying to like solve problems at the table. There's something that could go more smoothly here. A load that the game could bear for the players here so that they can get more quickly into the frisson of the situation, or like, get to the emotional stuff.
Greetings and welcome to the Quantum Ogre Cast, the topical TTRPG podcast you were destined to encounter, no matter what choices you made. I am your Elder Goblin host, Jorban, and today is a very special guest. I'm very excited. Luke Crane, creator of Burning Wheel, Torchbearer, Mouse Guard, and several other things probably that I'm less familiar with. How you doing, Luke?
I am doing well. Thank you for having me, Elder Goblin Jordan.
It's a tongue twister. I've never actually said them all together in that way. So, well, I like to start things off with a more casual conversation because we're probably going to get into some meaty philosophical stuff here on the channel because that is Burning Wheel. But here's a fun one for you. What is one of your favorite bands, or maybe a band that has really, been your favorite lately, if that's too difficult?
God, I love music. Um, I have a huge music collection. There's a wall of CDs over here
Ah,
and
nice.
vinyl. I've got cassettes. Yeah, I love music. I listen to things that are dark and heavy and underground, mostly. We last night, my partner Rachel and I were in Brooklyn to see Yob and Windhand,
Mm.
which, if you like doomy metal, super good. But recently, one of my idols passed away. He's about my
Mm.
age, and Thomas Lindberg, who's a Swedish metaler, and he was the frontman for At the Gates and a bunch of other bands like The Crown, and one of my all-time favorites, Dysphere. Uh, and so I've been going back and listening to his catalog since he died last month, and he just has such a great way of seeing the world. It's just full of fury and rebellion and frustration and fear. But yeah, it's hard to describe like how
Mm.
he mixes all these things together. But yeah, if you would like to listen to a metal album that has like punk rock roots, Dysphere's Live the Storm is just my favorite
That sounds awesome.
albums.
Actually, sounds right up my alley. And I would expect nothing less from the creator of Burning Wheel. Some dark, gritty, like maybe a little grim, a little on the darker sphere. That's
Yeah, man.
awesome.
I love it.
Cool, cool. Well, yeah, let's get into some conversations about role playing games because I think that's what we're both excited about today. And with someone of such prestige and so many role playing games under their belt, I would be remiss not to dive into some deep delves in the damp, dark dungeons. So let's do it today on this episode. How you doing? What's been going on with you? What are you into lately? What excites you? Let's just strike up a conversation and see where it goes.
Sounds good. Yeah, I am. As I said, I'm of the variety of being who becomes hyper focused on a thing. Um, and I'm just deep dive into something. Um, but I'm weirdly like coming out of some deep dives lately. It's because I've been forced into being a generalist.
Mm,
Um,
I know that
uh,
feeling.
yeah. But let's see. So over the past couple of years, I have tried to learn how to play chess, and it is a infinitely frustrating game. I am fascinated by chess as a game designer, as I am about many things in life. And just like how, like in today's climate of game design, chess would not last. People would be like, the end game is broken. Like what? Like you need to like get rid of this idea of stalemate and like what? Like the game goes on too long and like um
That's
and, like I don't
hilarious.
understand. Like I don't know where the pawn is pointing. Is it pointing straight ahead? Is it pointing left? Is it pointing the right? Like what? Is it, like where? If my pawn passes your pawn, like right, we just never survive in today's environment for game design. But it's such a good game, obviously. But it is so fucking hard. And I've reached the point of learning in chess where I can kind of get to the point of having to make a critical decision that requires seeing the board a few states deep,
Mm,
right? I know my principled moves. I know like I know six moves into an opening, like right, like um, but but then I reach the middle game and I'm like, okay, this is it. This is the inflection point in the game, and I have to make a mistake. Is what I have to do. That's what I do every time, and then whatever advantage I have, just um.
yeah.
So
Well, you made it farther than I did. I could never see more than like a few steps ahead. There's something about chess when you really get into it that you have to be able to kind of predict your opponent's next few moves, at least like 3, 4 moves ahead almost, you know. And I
yeah,
could maybe do 1, 2 sometimes, but that was it. I'd never made it much further than that.
yeah, I've learned a lot of tricks about like hacks, about like right how to make principled moves, like how to like um rook A to D1, right? Like this move is like if you can make this move, you should make this move, right? Basically occupying the center file with rook A. Um like and so like if I'm out of moves, I'm like, I don't know, rook A to D1. And like, oh, it was the right thing. Or like point your bishops at the king. Stuff like that. Pile up on an isolated pawn, like things like that. So, and then I basically hope my opponent makes a mistake while I do those things.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was. Yeah, I think the most I ever really got into chess was around the time I watched Queen's Gambit, and then
Sure.
I went down a rabbit hole of like watching some Magnus videos. He was like the world champion at the time, and I would follow it for a little bit, and then I'd be like, okay, now I have no idea what is happening anymore, and it would go beyond my skill level basically pretty quick.
Yeah. 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 I got probably around a similar time, but I needed, like, it was around the time of Torchbearer second edition where I was waiting on basically the factory to get back with questions about materials or this or that, and it's just a long ass process, like between pre-production and the factory, and I had to like be able to keep the entire image of the game in my head from every
Mm,
rule to every color to every component. I had to basically just sit there for months and be like, don't move, don't forget anything, don't forget anything. Uh, and and so for some dumbass reason, I thought that chess would be a good way to like distract myself. Like, I was like, chess doesn't have a meta. Like, I can just play. Cut to like, right, staying up all night watching chess videos,
yeah.
watching Magnus games, trying to be like, what the fuck? I do not understand that move. Why would a human being make
So
that move?
so you went from like holding an entire game system into your head to thinking the way that I relax is to put a second game system into my head, but not mix the two in any way, and
Yeah.
yeah, just totally absorb a whole nother kind of a game.
The
That's
weird thing is it did work because I mean, I know because chess is so different from a role-playing game.
sure.
It is strange that it did work. But it worked too well. It was like this idea. I'm obsessed with this idea in like a role-playing game. I've never seen it really well implemented, but where you succeed too well. you
Mm,
like you succeed, you get what you want, and then you get this extra stuff that's like a curse.
hmm.
Cut to 5 years later, and you're like watching chess videos, reading books, and uh,
The kind of game that says like maybe the thing you wanted was a prize that you really didn't need in the long run. That's very
Right.
Burning Wheel, actually, in my opinion.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that kind of Schadenfreude. It's hard to do in Burning Wheel, but it is possible. Like because we invite you to torment one another by attacking the things that you care about. It does invite those situations.
Yeah,
But sometimes I just feel like a bastard when I.
well, no, it's such a just yeah. We can dive into talking about Burning Wheel a bit. You know, obviously you were the creator, and I'm sure that folks listening to this will want to hear some about the game. People who are familiar, my audience who probably knows who you are and knows that I'm a fan of Burning Wheel. It's such a it holds such a unique place in the TTRPG sphere, in my opinion. It really, I think, stands on its own as this unique style of play. I like to say it puts the role playing back into role playing games. Like it's got a real, almost mechanical emphasis on how to role play, which I thought was really cool. And at the time when I first played it, really like it clicked something in my brain that was like, wow, this is such a different way to approach role playing. Like I'm literally, by the time I'd built my character, I had this rich idea of who he was and what he wanted, and I knew like what I was going to go after. And really, the role playing was already set before me. Like the game master almost just built the game off of our beliefs and instincts and traits and stuff like that. And yeah, anyways, I'm just rambling now, but yeah, let's dive in and talk about maybe some of your game philosophy, your approach to design, because I think it really is such a unique system, and Torchbearer as well, because it's really side by side with it.
The terrain of Burning Wheel is the terrain of your mind, right? It's not you're not exploring a meta plot, and you're not exploring like a topographical space, geographical space, whatever. Like, right? It's not like old school D&D. The D&D that I played is a spatial puzzle solving game with war game aspects, and then like high school hormones um, thrown on top. So, um, and for Burning Wheel, I needed a way to explore the emotional space, the emotional terrain of my friends at the time, saying, I care about this thing in this game so much, I am willing to do things that I would never consider outside of the game, and even in other games, I wouldn't do.
Yeah.
Or we did them in other games, like this stuff would come up in we would play West End games, Star Wars, or early Shadowrun, probably first edition Shadowrun. These moments would come up where my players would care so deeply about something that they would go at each other's throats, or that they would they would diverge from these other ideas of like the adventure or
Mm.
the meta plot or whatever, and they would want to do this. And I even felt it too when I was playing these games. Like my characters lacked the ability of catharsis, right? I would start off a character wanting something or caring about something, and then things would shift or change, or the cost would be too high, or I would fail, or something like that. And then there was no way for the character to represent their, internal shift, right? The catharsis of like, I don't care about this anymore. I'm a different person. I'm going to get revenge, or I'm going to quit the rebellion, or, or whatever, right? Like those like really, hey, Andor, those really, really important moments in narrative, in like in any kind of like serial narrative, or any like especially adventure fiction, where you have these crises and the characters change through. And so I wanted to focus on that for Burning Wheel, and the more um the more we brought that to the fore, right? It's just very clear, like the, this is what this game is about, and then everything else around that is all this scaffolding that where we want to, we want to get the players and the game master to the point where they're focused on these types of decisions, and where the decisions have stakes. They're really
Mm.
meaningful. That that it's dangerous, it's critical. Like that's why violence is the way it is in Burning Wheel. It is to like if you keep pushing, 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 and the knives come out, then like you should feel like that that your pulse pounding and the weight of your belief versus the weight of your blood.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
so
In fact, just to cut in and kind of give you a break
yeah,
for a second, um,
please.
you know, I have a friend who he's the kind of person who he loves to write like a rich backstory and who his family was and what kingdom he comes from and all that kind of stuff. And I would look at it, at the time we were playing like either 5e or Pathfinder, I can't remember, but I would look at like all this stuff and I'd be like, dude, we need to try Burning Wheel. I because this is the way I would pitch it to my friends too. Like, if you guys want to play Game of Thrones, we don't need to play 5e. We need to play Burning Wheel because in that world, in that kind of a setting, it's about the relationships between the characters, between the factions, what their goals are, and if somebody does draw a sword, it's not going to end well. I had a character in my first Burning Wheel game who he was torn between, he was kind of a double agent. He worked for like the Thieves Guild, but he was also like with the local guard. So he was trying to decide who he really worked for, and it created this interesting, to save all the details, it culminated in this moment where he had to choose, and he was going to get basically stabbed by one guy or the other, whether it was the Thieves Guild or the Captain of the Guard. And boy, let me tell you, that was not only like one of the most tense moments I've ever had in a role-playing game, but it did not end well. I got stabbed, and it was just a downhill slide. My wounds got severe, and it was just a death spiral for that guy. It did not did not go as planned. But that's what happens when you stand between two worlds and you make some rough choices. So,
But as a player, you found that satisfying.
oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. I know. I it was also the culmination of the character I had built because if you say I'm a double agent, I work for the Thieves Guild, but I'm also kind of a good guy, but I do what has to be done. You're gonna end up in a bad space at some point along your journey. That's just, and the game master leaned into it, and yeah, it became a whole leg of the story, and by the end, he was just washed up in the side of a ditch basically, and I was like, yep. I'm totally happy with this. This is where he did what needed to be done. He kind of had his, to follow the Game of Thrones analogy, he kind of had his the Hound moment, where it was like he tried to come back, but by the time he did, it was too late, and he had taken on some wounds, and that was it. So
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that stuff. I like tragedy. I just like having that opportunity, that possibility in the game, and I just want the system to support those kind of ideas,
yeah,
rather than, I mean, sure, like we can have dramatic play in D&D 5e and or in Apocalypse World or whatever. Like, obviously role-playing games lend themselves to these kind of moments, like where you get to say something passionate and meaningful and stand for it, pursue in these games, and it's really wonderful. I just wanted the game to focus on that.
yeah, and it really does. And I think, I heard it said one way before. I'm going to butcher the quote, but it was basically like, what a role playing game is about by what it spends its word count on.
For
And
sure.
so, like a game like 5e, has a really, it's about killing monsters. It's about getting powers and loot, and that's really most of what it is. Um, but like in Burning Wheel, there's so much time and emphasis dedicated to things like Artha, which is like your resource in the game for basically following your own path, your character's
Mhm.
path, what they want, their goals, things like that. Um, and so, yeah, I think it really does enrich a certain style of play that you just don't see in other games because it's not as present. There's not as robust a social pillar or like connections, because even like things like relationships and circles and stuff like that, that becomes such a big part of it if your game master leans into it. It's just, yeah, I could geek out about it all day, but it's something that I think you need to experience in order to really understand. Oh, this is what maybe Jordan is saying about like a mechanically rich role playing system. Emphasis on the role playing.
Mhm. It's funny, having tried to convince people that it is worth it to try this for over 20 years. It's always been an interesting conversation. The general response is that, oh, I don't need that. I can do that in my own game. And
Yeah,
I'm like, but 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 just try, like just try it.
hear me
It's
out.
just yeah, hear me out. Just see what it feels like if when the system rises up to meet you on that journey, rather than you kind of stepping away from the system and having a cigarette and thinking about your life. Like just like the Burning Wheel system will support you. Um, but yeah, it's always very interesting to see, like it's a very it's a it is the Burning Wheel is a philosophy. It's a different way to look at kind of adventure focused role playing that focuses more on the idea of intrigue and social interaction and yeah, belief and breaking a belief and right, vows, breaking vows, that kind of stuff. And but also focuses on like serial narrative. Like Burning Wheel wants you to keep playing. Doesn't want like, oh, I did a thing and then my belief broke and now my character's over. No, right. The Burning Wheel wants the Hound to come back,
Yeah,
broken and changed. Right. Like there's so many affordances for catharsis in the game, because I think that's one of the real strengths of role playing games is this idea of that they're this serial narrative and that you can have the characters just growing and changing
yeah,
over
and
time. It's
and to
wonderful.
touch on that just for a second, I love that you said that because the Hound is such a great example actually because he goes through some monumental changes throughout the books or the series, and in Burning Wheel, that's the equivalent of just marking off one of those beliefs and saying this has changed. You know,
Yeah.
we had that moment, and no longer is his goal to whatever kill the king, kill his brother. Um, that ultimately does happen. Spoilers, but yeah. Like I do love that in the book it does say like your characters are living, breathing, malleable people, and their beliefs are going to change, and that's fine. And in fact, they should. It shouldn't be that you just believe this one thing throughout the entire game. I mean, unless it just never comes to fruition or something. But it is such a different approach, and we should probably get into like kind of defining some terms, like talking about beliefs, instincts, traits, artha, fate points, things like that. So if you want to take the wheel on that for a minute and maybe just like give everybody the quick definition so that they're not just scratching their head and going what is fate points.
Sure, sure. So your character in Burning Wheel by default has three beliefs. So there are three philosophies or goals, three ways the character sees the world, and we generally recommend that you write one about like their kind of philosophical stance. You write one about someone another player character, and how you feel about them is usually really easy. And then some kind of goal about like what you're up to, what you're gonna do. Like I will kill the king, that kind of stuff. Um, and so you have a kind of broader long-term idea. You have something that will draw you into interacting with somebody at the table, and then you have something that'll drive you into action. And then yeah, instincts are ways to really get your character in trouble, though we tell you that they're there to get your character out of trouble, but really we want you to use them in ways that cause trouble. But yeah, there are ways your character instantly reacts to the situation, and then when you engage these things in play, it's completely optional. You don't have to, you're not forced to. Um, but when you stand up for a belief or you trigger an instinct in a way that gets your character into trouble, then yeah, you earn rewards, which are called Arta in the game. There's multiple reward points in the game. There's not just one XP, there's three different types of XP. Uh, essentially, in addition to advancement, this is separate from advancement, has nothing to do with advancement. Um,
The way I
and
usually explain that to people is like it. A lot of times, it's almost like the Skyrim. Um, what is it like Skyrim skills, where like your skills level up individually, but it's usually because you're failing, you're getting hit, so your armor is leveling up, that kind of stuff. But like Artha and Fate and those kind of points are like a bonus sprinkled on top, where
Yeah,
you can kind of pick where they want to go.
yeah. The spiritual rewards versus more like mundane material things. And Yeah, and then the idea is that you create this cycle. You start with nothing or next to nothing, and you have a moment in the game where something that you care about comes up. Maybe your character's in trouble. I stand up for your character because I have a belief about your character. And then at the end of that session, the group says, "Hey, buddy, you stood up for that belief. You get a fate point." And then the next session, aha, now I have a fate point. Now I can spend that fate point on whatever I want. It doesn't have to be on that belief, but now, right, my character starts rolling in this investment, in this idea that the more I role play, the more I express what this character is about, the more I say it, the more I act on it, the more my character is going to be able to show up in critical moments, right? When it's time to, make that critical argument or that sword thrust or whatever, you're going to have a bunch of these points, which you can spend on the roll and invest. And then the third type is actually uh, adjudicated by the game master and based on the players kind of in, investing in the world itself. There's a special point that they can get, or either breaking the campaign or saving the campaign or something like that. And those points are critical because then there's a whole combination set rule where if you spend all of them in certain combinations, then you get even more cool stuff.
Because where would we be as gamers if we didn't have the pedantic little charts and ways to spend our points and things like that?
Yeah. I, yeah, I don't know. I just like wheels within wheels. I like
I can
like
tell.
there's like that like larger one where you're supposed to be spending like you just spend fate persona, you just spend fate persona, like that's meant to like be like years in the making. Like that's what kind of psychopath I am. I'm
Yeah.
like, you're gonna play this game for years. One
No,
character.
well, it's awesome because like I have a friend I'm thinking of specifically in mind, and like every time I talk about Burning Wheel, I'm like, imagine social role playing, but it's also crunchy. Like it's the most
Yeah.
crunchy social role playing you can have. And he's just like, what? I don't know. I don't know if I understand that yet, but like you will, you will.
I mean, it's funny. We like done different versions of that game. Like, try in this process of like trying to express to people that, hey, this is a cool way to look at a role-playing game character and a cool way to play these games. Uh, we struck upon Burning Empires, which went the other way, which is way too complicated. And then we did Mouse Guard, and then we did Torchbearer. Like we've explored, uh, you know, trying to use that same underlying philosophy in different ways. Yeah, Torchbearer is basically just okay. What if you were in a dungeon, but you really cared about things?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's been a while since I picked up my Mouse Guard book, but it had a slightly different take on like the beliefs, instincts, and traits that I thought was cool too. But it kind of went, I would say, in a looser direction with it than
Yeah.
Burning Wheel or even Torchbearer is. But I thought that was pretty fascinating too because it still stuck to the core identity I felt of like your games, Burning Wheel and things like that, but had like a more, maybe I don't know if this is true, but maybe more targeted at a younger audience kind of a thing. Maybe a little easier to adjudicate on the fly, and but you could speak on that. Maybe I'm way off.
Um, Mouse Guard it definitely was aimed at like just saying like, okay, here's the bucket of the idea. Let's not get into the like nitty gritty minutia. Also, we tried to like, as designers, we were like, well, what if we tried to like fix some of this stuff? What would happen if we fixed it? The air quotes for everybody listening at home. Um, and so that's why, the the rewards are a little different and whatnot. We're just
Yeah.
playing around there in the design space. And Mouse Guard is actually aimed not at younger players per se. Kids, it's funny. kids don't care about mouse card and
Hmm.
don't really want to play. They want to play cool games like D&D or Apocalypse World because Apocalypse World has like sex moves. Um, but
That is the first time I've ever heard anyone say that, but that's hilarious.
uh, it's so weird. We thought about this, and I'm glad I realized that this wasn't going to work, um, because we aimed Mouse Guard at role playing families,
Mm.
with the idea that the parents would likely be the vector, where one of the game master parents would say, "Hey, I found a role playing game we can all play." And here you can read these comics, or maybe the kids would come and say like these comics are cool, and the parents are like, haha, I've got a role play for you. um and right, and so then in the book it's buried in there somewhere, but it recommends uh start with the most experienced game master, play a mission or two, and then rotate the game master around. Mouse guard's really easy to game master. um so yeah,
Great.
especially like when a character it passes on in mouse guard, we recommend rotating the game master's chair.
Which is such a cool concept as well. I feel like so much of the burden of gaming is it's like, oh, it's that guy's domain over there. The one who
Yeah,
sits in the chair. You know,
I hate it.
yeah, and
Yeah,
that does drive me crazy. I advocate a lot on my channel for like rotating. I even had came up with GMUary where you should let everyone else try, stuff like that. Um, but yeah, if by the way, if you haven't checked out the Mouse Guard comics, they're phenomenal. They're really cool, great artwork,
they're really good.
really really fun inspiration. If you're playing Mouse Guard or if you're playing Mouse Ritter or anything really, just great stuff. But yeah, anyways, that's a whole whole nother subject. Um, you know, your friend sent me an email, Sanj,
Sanj, yeah.
Sanj, and he
Hey
had some.
Sanj.
Hey, what's going on? Yeah, he had some really great things, some kind of subjects that he brought up. Yeah, he was talking about trait votes. Traits were something that really pulled me into Burning Wheel because there is all that fiddliness of like character building that you have in a lot of other role playing games. I'm doing air quotes, um, but I loved conceptualizing the identity of my character, like what he was gonna, what his goals were, but in a mechanical way still. Like, I was trying to decide, like, do I want to take a peg leg and get a few more points over here so that I can take that extra skill and upgrade it to a gray or whatever so I can roll it easier, or shade it, I think is
Shaded, yeah.
yeah, shade it. Yeah. And it's that kind of stuff that I really think makes Burning Wheel what it is. It's this combination. It's like all the pieces working together, because you could say, like you were saying earlier, other role playing games, sure, you could get really deep and gritty with the role play and like really put stakes in it. But when you're looking at you're building your character in Burning Wheel, you're looking at your life paths. You're like, was I a cobbler? Is this gonna matter? Is this ability gonna fork into something else later on? There's just and like, what are my wises, and what do I care about the most, and where do I really sink all these points and stuff? It's just there's a lot of fun to be had in the character creation and in the fiddly bits of building that character. And even like, I'm really rambling here, but like by the time I got to the end and I like figured out how circles work in relationships, I was like, oh man, I'm gonna have to go back and take some more detriments, because I want to just put a few more points in so that I could be, related to the king, or like, be part of the royal family or something like that. And I just think that's such a brilliant way to tie it all together for the players as well, because some games, so much of that weight is on the game master that it's cool to see the narrative impact you can have as one of the players at the table, if that makes sense.
Sure. All right, well, I want to correct you on one thing.
Oh, go
it's
for it.
not it's not necessary in this system to take a negative to get a positive.
Okay.
Some things are just unalloyed positives, some things are unalloyed negatives, and some things have some teeth to them where you can fit in like, oh, right, well, if I'm a leper, I'm going to get a couple free trait points that I can use to buy a sick ass trait, but I'm a leper. Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
right there, there's some, so because it just try to use some basic design principles in there of like tiny bits of balance, but on the extremes, complete non-balance. That was
Yeah.
one thing that we threw out really early. We just wanted, like, it's basically as soon as we started designing those life paths, we were like, balance is bullshit. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, and it's impossible. Like, if I want a really rich world and I want to represent, like, right, like, in order for beliefs to work, there must be inequality and injustice in the world. Check that out.
Mm.
Uh,
Not in our world. That doesn't happen
and
yet.
no, certainly not. But right, and in order for their like so right for your character to be primed to enter this world as whatever they are, they've got to be on top, they've got to be underneath, they've got to be struggling in the middle, right? They've got to have the boot to somebody's throat, the boot to their throat, whatever. So that had to be represented in the life path. Uh, Otherwise, like Burning Wheel, doesn't work with tunes, and which is why Torchbearer is such a really difficult design for us to get like the idea that your tunes in Torchbearer that you're just like, oh, I'm a little fighter magic user guy or whatever adventurer, like we had to really drill into the design to make sure that you were going to come out with the right idea, not just be an asshole.
Yeah.
um uh
Yeah, not just the
so
the brooding guy in the corner who doesn't talk to anybody, and what the old trope, the Lone Ranger kind of character.
we do not like that guy. We dunk on him
Yeah,
in all of our games.
as you should.
um so right. So the life paths, like, we want to represent the richness of life. I mean, they're not historical or perfect. There's a lot of gameness to them. But when you take them in combination, and that was one thing I really worked on too. Like there's some life paths that are locked off, or you have to take certain steps to get to them. But I also tried to build lots of secret paths to
Mm.
get around society, to get around your purpose, to end up somewhere where you didn't belong. Sure, it has a cost, but yeah, now you're a rogue wizard or whatever the fuck. Um, and that was really critical to me in building them, is to make sure that the impossible was possible given certain circumstances. And when I make a character still to this day, more than 20 years on, I am always surprised and delighted. I always learn something new about this character. I'm like, oh, you you're that? Oh, okay, cool. And then I'm like, oh well, what if I wanted to take, this other life path to get there? And I'm like, oh, yeah, oh.
Yeah, yeah, and that's exactly the kind of tinkering I'm talking about there, where it's like, where can I squeeze out just one more little point here or there? Like,
Yeah.
can I get that life path and be the spy master and the town guard at the same time? How do I align these things perfectly? And is maybe they're even you have to twist your game master's arm a little bit and make it all work together, but you can get there. There's enough. There's so many whatever traits, life paths, and things in the. I have the gold edition, and in that book, yeah, it's great. And sometimes even if I'm playing other role playing games, this is what's funny. I'll still pull out Burning Wheel to decide who my character is. Sometimes
What?
I'll just I'll flip through the traits for a while and I'll be like, you know what, this is a fun little thing to add in there. Yeah, maybe he does have like old bones, and every time the wind is cold, and he's grumpier than he normally would be, and stuff like that. And it's just there's so many fun, flavorful things that sometimes I'll pull them out to build NPCs or anything really. It's just
Mhm.
a resource.
It's super cool.
Let's get into we kind of danced around the different editions, different games, Burning Wheel, Mouse Guard, Torchbearer, and we I originally pitched the idea of like talking about some of the philosophies behind your game design. So why Burning Wheel? Why of this game? Because when you're sitting there in whatever early 2000s, you're looking at third edition probably, and you're thinking the game I want doesn't quite exist. So why Burning
Right.
Wheel?
Yeah. That comes back to this idea that like we played a lot of different games. Uh, my friends that I started role playing with, and then later my role playing game crew in college, and then the crew that we created in New York played a lot of different role playing games, and yeah, none of them really got us to those points of catharsis and rewarded us for it, like that supported us. And that was something I didn't quite understand at the time. I intuited, but I didn't have like an intelligent understanding of what I was after. And it comes down to actually something very, very simple, and that it took years of years to articulate and like research and all these things and that is a game is a system, and a system produces a certain range of results. A system shapes the behavior of its users. I understood this intuitively from the beginning, but I couldn't articulate it, and so it was hard to design into. Now that position is controversial in role-playing games. It's hilarious. Like, right, there's this like system matters versus system doesn't matter, like weird culture war, like
Yeah.
right, and like if you tell the system doesn't matter people, you're like, cool, let's play Burning Wheel then, and they're like, no. Like, well, but I thought system didn't matter. um so but knowing that a game is a system, and then knowing that the system is going to shape the behavior of the player, that is super powerful. Now I'm thinking like a designer. Now I'm thinking like someone who's trying to like solve problems at the table. And that's kind of how I've always thought about my games, is like there's something that could go more smoothly here. There's
Hmm.
something that a load that the game could bear for the players here, so that they can, you know, get more quickly into the frisson of the situation, or like, get to the emotional stuff. Or and this is something that where my games run against part of the role playing game culture, is that my games don't trust the player in every moment to do the right thing. Right, like steal is a great example of this. Right, so in Burning Wheel, there's a mechanic called or a stat that your character has called steal, and every character also has a kind of a shadow version of steal called hesitation. And anytime your character is injured or frightened, or bespelled by elves or whatever, you have to test this steal against your hesitation, and your character may hesitate. You may want to be a hero here, and if you've banked some Arta, and maybe if you get lucky, maybe you can be a hero, but most characters hesitate. Um, and the hesitation options, like what does hesitation mean? Like I make them intentionally ignoble, like intentionally difficult to deal with, because at this moment, I want to separate the player and the character. I want the player to be looking at the character, shouting at them, going, "Go! What? No! What are you doing?" And I want the character to be turning around and being like, "I'm gonna die, dude. What the fuck?"
Yeah. Why do you
um,
hesitate?
right, right. Like, but there, I came to this understanding not through personal experience. I mean, I have had moments in my life where I've hesitated and panicked, and not. I have also had moments in my life where I'm like, why was I brave there? I should have just run away. Uh, but I was reading A Distant Mirror by Barbara Tuchman, and there, it, I believe at Nicopolis, and the kind of the climax of this historical moment, um, there is just this range of reactions to the the problem in front of these French and otherwise European nobility, and some of like the men who have trained their whole lives to wear armor and bash people, and then they just fucking panic. They just lose their shit and panic, and they invent all these excuses about why they're panicking and why they're not going to fight, and their panic, those dudes that panic get Decussy killed, essentially. The main character of this historical narrative, uh And like I just remember putting the book down, being like, wait a minute, this isn't just like a historical moment. This is like insight into human nature.
Mm.
And that you and Tuckman actually repeats this theme through all of her books, that you never ever know about someone until the moment they are tested,
Mm.
right? History tests you, and only then do you know what kind of person you are. Uh, and I wanted that in the game, and so it's in the game in a lot of ways, like with the beliefs and with the steel.
Well, and just
But
to kind of corroborate what you're saying here, it's such a different moment in a, like if you had a moment like that in Burning Wheel, you're going to be thinking about those options. You're going to be thinking like, oh, is this what my character is going to do in this moment? Whereas like if you're playing a game like maybe like a 5e or something, you're not going to hesitate. You're going to go, all right, I cast Fireball. You know, like
right,
let's get in a fight. This is the moment. You know, I roll to attack or whatever. And so yeah, it can accomplish, I think, by nature different tones because of the design behind it.
right, and that's where the system comes in. The system to the player that's just like, I fucking charge, let's fucking go. Like the system says, cool, great, I'm here for you. Just could you please pass this steel test, sir? Kind sir. Um, and and then right, like it's not that I want things to be predetermined. Like this character is always going to be a coward. This character is always, going to be a berserker. It's just that I want the game to be able to provide interesting situations and to break up these assumptions that we make about ourselves and about um, uh, characters in adventure fiction. If you play with a group for a long time, you start to see the personalities, the habits, the people. They just play this character that is kind of themselves in the role playing game. And Burning Wheel, you can do that, but Burning Wheel also invites you to say, "Wait a minute, I'm not this person. I I can do and say things here that are not me, and it's totally safe." I mean, the game stakes are terrifying, but the like table stakes, like I have definitely had moments in this game where I have like said something terrible, horrible, volatile, whatever, and then I've turned to another player, turned to the game master, and be like, "That's just I'm not serious. Like that's my belief. That's
Yeah.
character. That's like I've got to." And they're and like fuck yeah.
Yeah, no, it is awesome. It's so hard to like really even quantify for someone who hasn't tried a game like this. Because if you're like I was, my experiences were mostly like D&D, Pathfinder, and then when I tried this game, I was like, okay, there's a place to tell a different kind of tale than comes through a system that's mostly about combat, that's mostly about leveling up, building your character in that way. The game outside of the game where you build the character, that game, which Burning Wheel has too. But like, point being, it broadened. This sounds so cliche to say, but like, kind of broadened my horizons to be like, if I do want to tell this tale that is more about political intrigue, diplomacy, that kind of thing, there's a system that fully supports this and leans into it. And it does really matter. I think system does matter because, if you're walking around with a group of barbarians and wizard duckmen and polar bear half folk and stuff, it's going to feel very different than Game of Thrones, right? Like you're not going to have a Game of Thrones in that world. Somebody's going to shoot their cool duck laser gun fireball blaster, and then that just there goes any sense of like the tone that you were trying to establish in that moment. And it's a different avenue to different kinds of stories. Like you're saying, you can still tell the dungeon crawl stories with Torchbearer. You can still go on the epic quest to the Lonely Mountain and go fight Smog or whatever. But you're gonna do it methodically in such a different way based on this game. It really is going to shift the way you approach that encounter, those kinds of things. Because, yeah, and like I like what you said about cognitive load, right? Like, really, all systems are deciding where do I want to shift the cognitive load? Am I the kind of game master that's good at improving dungeons? Am I the kind of game master that's good at improving NPCs or interactions between factions, things like that? And so Burning Wheel says, "Oh wait, here's some help. Let's guide you along here, tell you how these relationships work, tell you how to help you build a more interesting, thorough, thought out character than your like very thinly veiled Darkwing Duck guy."
What do you guys got against ducks, man?
I I played Dragonbane once, and I was like, everyone's gonna be duck people.
Yeah.
uh,
I tried to build a system that if you care about something, it will reward you, which is a trick because then you'll care about it more and you keep caring. Right. Like I want the system to support you when you care about something, and then right, that it turns up the heat. And it can't do it on its own. This is not a CRPG. It's not Skyrim. Like it needs human operators, and it's by design. Like there are big empty spaces in the game that require the game master to say, "Oh, did you fail that circles test? Oh, interesting. Well, this enemy, yeah, it's your wife's brother. Yeah. Yeah, now he knows that you're out here, sneaking around behind her back doing whatever against her, you know, right? Like, right. It needs someone to intuit the connections between like, okay, my wife is allied with the king. I'm against the king. I got it, right? Like, and so those little sparks of inspiration are what create the fiber that ties together, these different little system nodes. And then suddenly you care a lot more. You're like, this guy that I've never met before, that was not an NPC anywhere before. You're like, oh fuck, my wife's brother's gonna die. Fuck. He like
yeah, suddenly there's stakes that really matter personally to your character. Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool. I think that is enough primer, hopefully, to get some people stoked about some of these games that you make, these awesome games that I am a huge fan of, by the way. I know we said this when the cameras were not rolling, but I love Burning Wheel. It holds a unique and special place in my heart as one of those games that just does something that nothing else quite touches. So, congrats for making an awesome game, and thank you for being here, dude. Honor to have you on the podcast. I think I've collected my gauntlet. What is it? The Infinity Stones of game designers at this point. I have like you and Runehammer and a couple other names, but
nice.
yeah, that's a little personal side quest for me. So
Very cool. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you rolling with Sanj's request. Like
yeah,
I've been head down working on a bunch of projects recently, so I have not been social or aware of what's going on out in the space. And so Sandra's just like tugging on my sleeve, like, dude, this podcast is really cool. You should do it. You should do it. And I'm like, oh yeah, whatever. Cool. Yeah.
well, yeah. Shout out to Sanj. Thanks for connecting us. I'm glad you like the podcast. That's awesome.
Yeah. So thanks for having me. Thanks for everybody. I hope you enjoyed my ramblings and rantings.
I think I
Yeah,
rambled
check out.
more than you, so it's fair game. But yeah,
It's
tell
fun.
everybody what you got going on next, and if you got anything on the horizon, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah. We're yeah, I've got 3 games in process right now that are getting inching close. We'll be doing some pre-ordery, crowdfundy type behaviors soon. I think the first one to go will probably be a new book for Torchbearer
Ooh,
called Midar Mark, which is actually a second edition of something we did about 10 years ago. But it is just so much deeper and huger and more beautifuler. Um, yeah, so be on the lookout for that. I think it's going to be a 600-page book.
wow. Okay, a beefy tome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, cool. I will wrap things up the way we always do on this channel, which is to say, We'll see you next time in the dungeon, no matter what choices you make. Hey, it's your old pal Jordan. Just wanted to say a big personal thank you to everyone who's liked, commented, subscribed, and hyped my videos over the years. If you like what we do here, make sure to follow me on some other platforms such as Instagram and Blue Sky, and if you feel up to it, check out the Patreon where I'll be talking about some of the games and projects I'm working on. Also, we have this initiative on the Discord I'm calling the Elder Goblin Academy that's all about playing more games and rolling more dice more often. Thank you guys for the support, and as always, learn, adapt, and grow.